Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Good evening.
Thank you for joining us.
Donald Trump was arraigned on a New York Supreme Court indictment.
The citizens in the Southern District of Florida, here in the District of Columbia.
A Fulton County grand jury returned a true bill of indictment.
34 felony counts of falsifying business records.
With felony violations of our national security laws, conspiring to defraud the United States.
Criminal racketeering enterprise to overturn Georgia's presidential election result.
We today uphold our solemn responsibility to ensure that everyone stands equal before the law.
We have one set of laws in this country, and they apply to everyone. Our evidence can be tested in court and judged by a jury of citizens.
We look at the facts, we look at the law, and we bring charges.
For the fourth time in as many months, Donald Trump, the former president of the United States, is facing a criminal indictment. Good morning and welcome to Morning Joe. It is Tuesday, August 15th. Let's dive right into the latest indictment for the former president. The charges are from Fulton County, Georgia, where Trump and 18 others were named in a sweeping 41-count indictment targeting alleged attempts to overturn the state's 2020 election results. Fulton County District Attorney Fani Willis announced the charges just before midnight.
The state's role in this process is essential to the functioning of our democracy. Georgia, like every state, has laws that allow those who believe that results of an election are wrong, whether because of intentional wrongdoing or unintentional error, to challenge those results in our state courts. The indictment alleges that rather than abide by Georgia's legal process for election challenges, the defendants engaged in a criminal racketeering enterprise to overturn Georgia's presidential election result.
The indictment charged under Georgia's anti-racketeering law accuses the former president and his allies of running a criminal organization that, quote, knowingly and willfully joined a conspiracy to unlawfully change the outcome of the election in favor of Trump. District Attorney Willis said she would give all defendants until August 25th to turn themselves in and would push to go to trial within 6 months. The indictment charges Trump with 13 felony counts, and they are violation of the Georgia Racketeer Influenced and Corrupt Organizations Act, or RICO, 3 counts of solicitation of violation of oath by a public officer, 2 counts of conspiracy to commit false statements and writings, 2 counts of conspiracy to commit forgery in the first degree, 2 counts of false statements and writings, conspiracy to commit impersonating a public officer, conspiracy to commit filing false documents, and filing false documents. Many of Trump's allies were also charged with various crimes, including Trump's former personal attorneys, Rudy Giuliani and John Eastman, former chief of staff, Mark Meadows, former Justice Department official, Jeffrey Clark, former Trump campaign attorney, Kenneth Chesebro, former members of Trump's 2020 legal team, Jenna Ellis, Sidney Powell, Giuliani, Eastman, Clark, Chesebro, and Powell are also allegedly co-conspirators listed in Special Counsel Jack Smith's indictment of Trump in the 2020 election case in D.C. Joining the conversation, we have U.S. Special Correspondent for BBC News, Katty Kay. The host of Way Too Early, White House Bureau Chief at Politico, Jonathan Lemire, Pulitzer Prize-winning columnist at the Washington Post, Eugene Robinson, former U.S. Attorney and senior FBI official Chuck Rosenberg, former U.S. Attorney and MSNBC legal analyst Joyce Vance, and political reporter for the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, Greg Bluestein. So, Joe, this happened overnight. The indictment is almost 100 pages long, and some Republicans were quick to jump in front of cameras and make ridiculous parallels to this.
Well, it's because they're still playing the game of politics, and they somehow missed the memo months ago that this has turned from a political facade, a political charade, into a deadly serious legal issue, regardless of where the indictments are. So they can lie all they want. They can try to puff up smoke. They can talk about Hunter Biden. As we've said before, Hunter Biden will be judged. He'll be judged in a court of law, and he'll be judged by a jury. And however that jury rules will be how things are determined. So Ted Cruz and the rest of them can huff and puff and try to blow the house down, but it doesn't change a damn thing about Donald Trump's future. His future rests, whether he's in jail for the rest of his life or whether he's a free man. It doesn't rest on Truth Social. It rests in a jury box. And that's going to be in 4 different jury boxes now. Joyce Vance, your takeaway from what you saw in Georgia last night.
Well, Joe, it's a broad and a sweeping indictment, as we've all been discussing. Something that I'm intrigued by is the appearance at least 89 times in the indictment of the phrase unindicted co-conspirator. And prosecutors like Chuck and me, when you see that in an indictment, you begin to wonder if there's cooperation going on, because that suggests that the grand jury at least knows about these folks, may have heard from them, and they appear in some key junctures in the charges that Willis brings. There's mention of an unindicted co-conspirator on January 6 and January 7 as Sidney Powell goes into Georgia, into Coffee County, and illegally accesses voting machines in that friendly county that is Republican-controlled. There's mention of unindicted co-conspirators in White House meetings in late December when obstruction of the electoral count is discussed. And it's been difficult for prosecutors who've investigated Trump to get insider cooperation in the past, both in cases like this one that are related to the election, also in cases related to Trump's other dealings. He maintains fierce loyalty in those around him. If that bubble has finally burst, and if there are unindicted co-conspirators walking into this indictment who are cooperating, Willis may well flip some of these folks who are indicted alongside Trump and be able to present a firsthand, very detailed picture of this conduct to the jury that ultimately hears the case against Donald Trump.
Chuck Rosenberg, I'm curious, the defendants have 10 days to, quote, turn themselves in. What might be different in Georgia in terms of process? What will you be looking for there? And then overall, what stands out to you in this nearly 100-page indictment?
Yeah, well, first, I agree with Joyce, which is always a safe position. A broad and sweeping indictment and the number of unindicted co-conspirators, Mika, as Joyce referred to, is telling. The other thing that's really interesting to me is that the feds took a very different approach to their election interference case. Mr. Trump was the lone defendant in the federal case in D.C. with 6 unindicted co-conspirators. Here he is one of 19 co-defendants with 30 unindicted co-conspirators. I don't mean to suggest that one is wrong or one is right. They both may succeed. I suspect they will. But they're very different approaches. And then to a point that Joe made, which I think is really important. Lots of people are going to say lots of things about these various cases. Folks like Senator Cruz, and I don't mean to pick on him, but he sort of volunteered. What they say has no meaning. There will be 4 trials unless folks plead guilty. That means there'll be 48 people, 4 sets of juries, 12 people on each jury, who will determine whether or not these charges are valid. That's it. It's not going to be me. It's not going to be Senator Cruz. It's not going to be anyone else. We're not going to qualify for any of these juries. It's going to be 48 people in 4 jurisdictions who are going to decide. Prosecutors don't put words in an indictment unless they can prove it. So assuming they can prove it, Mr. Trump is in a lot of trouble. So are a whole bunch of other people, too. That is one of the striking things about this newest indictment. The breadth and the scope, as Joyce said, the sweeping nature of the indictment, but the number of people who have been charged is utterly fascinating, complicates the case, but gives us rich detail and something to really follow in the months and perhaps years to come.